What is up, everybody? I'm No Lux Given here with your afternoon snap, and for today's video, I'm gonna do something a little bit different. Plunder Castle was just removed from Marvel Snap, so I'm gonna take a look at my games from the first day that Plunder Castle was added to the game. Back when it was a featured location, I never actually showcased these games, so figured now would be a great time to do so. I decided to play Galactus Destroyer to fully make use of Plunder Castle, and really this was the first time that I started to see some success with Galactus, and this is what sent me down the Galactus rabbit hole, which led me to all of the future iterations in the deck that I am playing today. So we have Plunder Castle to thank for all of that, but Plunder Castle was removed because it was just way too restrictive of a location, and this first game we're going to look at is a great example of just how restrictive Plunder Castle can be. After we play Dr. Octopus into Titan, my opponent will not be able to play for the rest of the game. This was before Jeff the Baby Land Shark was added to the game. This was when Zabu was the season pass card. Everybody was playing Dracula Zabu. As we'll see, some of these familiar cards come out for my opponent here, but now my opponent is totally locked out for these last two turns. You can't play into Plunder Castle because your 6-cost cards cost 5, and you can't play into Morag because you have to play something into Titan first, and my opponent can't play anything into Titan. So on turn 5, I'll be able to drop a Null, which is kind of a little sign of things to come, but if you are up by 30 power, I think it's potentially tempting to stay in it here, so my opponent does decide to stay in it, in fact, and we're going to be able to Shang-Chi their Infinite and their Giganto to bring that lead over to my side of the table. Infinite and other big things that you could cheat out with Jubilee and Dracula were big because they could be played into Plunder Castle, and they could also be cheated out even cheaper with Zabu, which was the biggest deck at the time, like I said. But Galactus had some ways to battle for a lot of power, and that's what we're going to see in this one. My opponent skips on turn 5, and we're just going to Galactus into the Plunder Castle. They really didn't have anywhere to play since Bar with No Name was that center location. We'll get to throw Wolverine into Plunder Castle for a little bit of extra power to lead us into this final turn, and then I'll just drop down Destroyer to add 15 more, and my opponent stays in it here because if we had just played Chavez, they could have beat us here with Infinite, but because we had Destroyer, we are able to take the win. This is one of my favorite games. My third location is Project Pegasus. 5 extra energy is going to allow me to drop Dr. Octopus into Murder World and blow up my opponent's entire hand. I'll even get to throw Electro into Murder World, so that's great. And then we also have Plunder Castle to boot. I don't know exactly what my opponent is playing just yet, but I'm gonna snap because we're about to destroy all of their cards, which is super sweet. And then my cards that get destroyed, I don't even care about. That's a great thing for me still. So this game is going really fantastic. There is one awkward thing, which is Wolverine could flip into Plunder Castle here, which could be good as well, but it will mean that I won't be able to drop Galactus into Plunder Castle later on. So it's definitely something to consider, as my opponent's Maximus allows me to draw that Galactus. We're going to fast forward here through Wong, Groot, Odin, which gives my opponent a giant Groot. Sarah is going to lock my opponent out of Plunder Castle as well, which is interesting to note, and Wolverine will land back into Murder World. So I will be able to drop the G-Man down into Plunder Castle unaffectedly, and we'll just worry about doing that next turn since I have that additional energy there from the Electro that we destroyed. I'm going to drop Psylocke and Death into Murder World since I can't play Death into Plunder Castle. That was the one awkward part about Plunder Castle. You can't play Death there. You can't play any cards that have been reduced by Sarah. So if your opponent has a Sarah out, you just know that they're not going to be able to play into Plunder Castle. Though typically people aren't able to play to Plunder Castle till turn 6 anyways. But here we go, dropping that Galactus in there, and then for the final turn of the game, I'll either be able to play Null or Destroyer. Don't have to worry about Shang-Chi, don't have to worry about Enchantress. We just get to drop a ton of power there, and knowing that, my opponent is going to retreat. You don't always have to play into Plunder Castle, of course. There is some flexibility depending on what you draw, and this game we could honestly either take it either way. We could just go Psylocke into Plunder Castle, or we can wave out a turn for Galactus, so that way we can Spider-Man. I'm going to go for the Spider-Man line, just because that generally gives your opponent less room to play into it. I don't know what my opponent is playing here. They've snapped. So we're going to snap back, and then we're just going to wave and drop that Galactus into Onslaught Citadel. That's the plan here. I think that's still going to be pretty good, though. We will see that my opponent's turn 3 play is Zabu into Onslaught Citadel, so all of their cards are going to be super, super cheap. They're going to be able to dump their hand here on turn 4, as we will see in just a second here. They play 3 cards, but we're going to blow up 2 of them before they even flip over with Galactus, so we won't really have to worry about it. Wolverine will join our Galactus here, and then we'll see that my opponent plays a Shang-Chi into Zabu. They probably had a Moon Girl as one of those other face-down cards, but on turn 5, I'm just going to drop Spider-Man and Death. This was something you had to do back then because Zabu decks also played Spider-Man themselves. So we had to get in under the webs and drop all our power and Spider-Man them while they dropped a bunch of power as well. And a 17 power Darkhawk is going to tie it after it goes down to 13 power, and Onslaught Citadel definitely aiding my opponent a little bit more than it helped me, but we're still able to get out of there with a tie. This was another fun one where Cloning Vats allowed me to play double Wolverine. So not only that, we were able to fill the location with Psylocke and set up for a turn 5 Galactus that my opponent couldn't stop me with an Arrow. They play Arrow into Cloning Vats. That's going to give them another Arrow that they could play again next turn, but I've totally filled that location, so they won't be able to stop my Galactus, and we are free to drop that into Plunder Castle. And we even continue to get even more lucky this game. Let me jump ahead for just a second past the Galactus animation. Both of my Wolverines take a visit into the sewer system before getting destroyed again. That's definitely worthy of a thumbs up. And then they flip over into Plunder Castle, and for the final turn of the game, I can play Destroyer, killing both of those Wolverines for a total of 31 power. Seeing that, my opponent is going to retreat, and this victory actually got me to Galactic rank for this season. So obviously I had to include this one here too. And I'll finish off today's video with this game where Bar Sinister is our 3rd location, which is going to allow me to drop a Psylocke there, and then I'll be able to play Galactus into Plunder Castle on turn 4. And that will lock my opponent out of that location, or lock my opponent out of playing until the final turn of the game. Now, we could lose this game in particular to an Infinite, but short of Infinite, it's going to be very, very difficult for my opponent to interact with any of this stuff because they won't be able to play any type of setup card. So I'm going to Galactus, I'm going to blow up everything, all of those little Psylocks, and then I'm just going to play a Destroyer into Plunder Castle and hope that they don't have, like, exactly Infinite. And if they don't, we win. Let's see, I'll jump ahead. Yeah, they're just gonna retreat. There you go. That's gonna be it for me today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this little walk down memory lane, taking a look at some old Plunder Castle games. But for today, that's gonna be it for me. Thank you guys very much for watching. I'm No Lux Given. Peace.